Good evening, dear dreamer. Wherever you are tonight, whether the clock shows early evening or the quiet hours just before dawn, I invite you to settle in, let your shoulders soften, and allow your thoughts to drift like stardust. Before we close our eyes, let's take a slow journey through a story that belongs to the universe itself. Not long ago, astronomers spotted something unlike anything they had ever seen before. A tiny glimmer, just a streak across the sky, but one that carried with it whispers from beyond the stars. This object was named ʻOumuamua, a word from the Hawaiian language that means a scout, a messenger from afar. Imagine it, a slender body, perhaps shaped like a cigar or a pancake, tumbling silently through the solar system. It did not come from here. It did not belong to the sun or to any planet. It was just passing through. For a moment, it was as if the cosmos had sent us a riddle, wrapped in stone and ice, carried on currents of interstellar night. Some scientists said it was simply a rock, a fragment cast away from another star. Others wondered if its strange movements meant something more, something we had never dared to imagine. And that's the quiet question we'll cradle tonight. What if ʻOumuamua wasn't just a rock? So take a breath, find your most comfortable position, and let curiosity guide you gently into rest. While your body unwinds, your mind can wander with me through a story that begins in the darkness of space. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the night sky above Hawaii. The air is warm, touched by salt from the sea, and the stars are scattered like lanterns across a black ocean. On the slopes of Haleakala, the great volcanic mountain, sits a quiet sentinel, the Pan-STARRS telescope. Its glassy eye turns each night toward the heavens, sweeping the sky for anything unusual, comets, asteroids, wandering lights that might one day pass too close to Earth. Most nights, what it sees is familiar, the same constellations wheeling overhead, the known paths of planets, the faint smudges of galaxies. But in October of 2017, the telescope caught a different kind of visitor. It was faint, so faint that only a careful algorithm could have noticed the trace. A streak of light, almost like a shooting star that had slowed down, lingered, and then slipped away. Astronomers looked closer, replaying the data. This wasn't a normal asteroid. Its path was wrong. Its speed was wrong. It didn't come from inside the solar system, circling our sun like a patient moth. No, this one was rushing in from the outside, from deep space, from a direction where no comet or planet belonged. At first, the object seemed almost unremarkable, just a small speck of reflected sunlight against the black. But the more they studied it, the stranger it became. The telescope had only glimpsed it for a few nights before it grew too faint, already rushing past Earth, already on its way back into the dark. To understand how fleeting this encounter was, imagine standing on the beach and seeing a bottle tossed up by the waves. You rush to catch it, but before you can unscrew the cap, the tide has pulled it away again. ʻOumuamua was like that, a cosmic message in a bottle, carried for millions of years between the stars, washing briefly into our solar system, and then gone again. It moved at nearly 87 kilometers per second, so fast that nothing in our solar system could have created or restrained it. The sun's gravity bent its path, yes, but could not keep it. Like a stone skipped across water, it came in, curved slightly, and then departed, never to return. When astronomers realized this, they felt a chill of wonder. For the first time in human history, we had spotted an object not born of our Sunday. Every other asteroid, every comet, every planet and moon we have ever known, all shared a common parent, the swirling nebula that collapsed billions of years ago to form our solar system. But this rock, if it was a rock, was different. It came from somewhere else entirely, another star system, another birthplace, another story. And yet, it refused to reveal its identity. Its brightness flickered as it tumbled, suggesting a shape long and thin, maybe 10 times longer than it was wide. Most asteroids are potato-shaped, roundish, lumpy. This one was different, a cosmic shard, a sliver, like no other we had catalogued. The astronomers scrambled to learn as much as they could. They pointed telescopes across the world at the fading point of light. Each night, it grew dimmer, slipping away. By the time the world truly knew of its existence, ʻOumuamua was already gone, sliding outward beyond the reach of most instruments. It was like waking from a dream and trying to recall the details. The harder you tried, the faster they dissolved. But still, that brief flash in the sky was enough. Enough to make us wonder, enough to remind us how vast and mysterious the universe really island. You can imagine the scientists, many of them awake in quiet observatories, sitting with mugs of coffee gone cold, their eyes on computer screens filled with streams of numbers, a blip here, a line there, and behind those numbers, a story older than our species, a traveller that had crossed light years of emptiness just to appear for a heartbeat in our skies. The discovery was announced, and quickly the world leaned closer. News outlets carried the story. An interstellar visitor had passed us by. For most people, it was just another headline, quickly replaced by the next. But for astronomers and for dreamers, it was something else entirely. A reminder that we are not alone in the void, not necessarily with neighbours, but with stories, with artifacts, with echoes of other places and times. ʻOumuamua. The name was given by Hawaiian linguists, carefully chosen to honour the land where the discovery took place. Scout, they said. Messenger, as though the rock itself were carrying a greeting card from another star, though written in a language we could not yet read. And so, the flash in the sky was more than data. It was a symbol. It told us that the universe is restless, that stars shed fragments, that planets break apart, that cosmic wanderers drift endlessly, until, by chance, they brush past another system. It told us that our night sky is not just backdrop, it is a river, and from time to time, something unfamiliar floats downstream. Now, imagine yourself there, in October 2017 on a Hawaiian hillside. The telescope dome is open, the air cool against your skin, and above you, the infinite stars shimmer. A faint signal appears on the screen inside, just a streak across the digital canvas. You wouldn't know, at first glance, that this tiny line marked history, but that is how discoveries often arrive, not with fireworks, but with quiet traces, whispers that only later swell into songs. ʻOumuamua was here, then it was gone. In all of human history, in all of recorded time, only for a few short weeks did we know its presence. And yet, in that brief encounter, it managed to stir something deep. Questions about where it came from, what it was, and whether perhaps it was more than stone. Like a guest who visits only once, leaving behind a single footprint in the sand, it slipped away. But the imprint remains, and so do the ripples of curiosity. That night in Hawaii, when the telescope's gaze caught a stranger in its field of view, we were reminded that the universe has surprises waiting for us, flashes of light that pierce the ordinary and vanish, leaving us to wonder as we drift into sleep. When astronomers first tried to imagine what ʻOumuamua looked like, they had almost nothing to go on, no crisp photograph, no sharp silhouette. All they had was the light, the faint glimmers of sunlight bouncing off its surface as it spun through space. And yet, those glimmers told a story unlike anything they had seen before. Most asteroids and comets in our solar system are irregular, lumpy, potato-shaped stones. Some are roundish, softened by collisions or melted into spheres by their own weight. Others are blocky, fractured, scarred by billions of years of impacts. Their shapes may be messy, but they are familiar. ʻOumuamua, however, refused to fit that pattern. As it tumbled, its brightness flickered in a rhythm that could not be explained by a squat, rounded body. The light curve, those faint rises and dips measured by telescopes, suggested something much stranger. Its length, perhaps 10 times greater than its width, a ratio unlike any known asteroid. Thin and stretched, like a cosmic splinter. Some compared it to a cigar, long, narrow, turning end over end as it sailed away. Others suggested a flat pancake-like disc, wide and thin, fluttering slightly as it spun. Both possibilities defied expectations. No natural body we had catalogued was shaped quite like that. Imagine holding a shard of glass up to the sun. As you turn it, the light flashes and fades, sometimes bright, sometimes dim. ʻOumuamua behaved in a similar way. its reflections waxing and waning, as though it were a shard of something greater, a fragment chipped from a larger world. The surface, too, seemed peculiar. It shone with a reddish hue, the kind of tint often seen on outer solar system objects, where cosmic rays from deep space have baked surfaces into rusty shades. That was not unusual. What was unusual was how sharply the brightness shifted, how extreme the contrast became as it rotated. This was not the slow, steady shimmer of a rounded rock. This was the flicker of something far stranger. Scientists ran simulations, spinning digital models, tilting them toward artificial suns, trying to match the rhythm of the light curve. Over and over, the answer came back the same. This thing was extreme in shape, either long and needle-like or flat and disc-like. Nothing in between could explain the pattern. And so, ʻOumuamua became a mirror for our imagination. Artists' sketches filled the gap, some drawing a cosmic cigar drifting silently against a backdrop of stars, others painting a glowing shard, thin as paper, coasting like a leaf across the void. The truth, hidden in the darkness, remained just out of reach. To understand how unusual this was, consider the catalogue of thousands of asteroids we know. Almost all of them have ratios of length to width no greater than 3:1. Oumuamua's ratio was closer to 10:1, perhaps even greater. That difference is not small. It is like comparing a round pebble to a sharpened spear. Why would a body form that way? Some suggested that perhaps it had been chipped away by violence. Maybe it was a sliver broken off a larger planet, shattered in a cataclysm long ago. Maybe tidal forces near a giant star had stretched it thin, flinging it outward as a fragile splinter. Others imagined that it might not be solid at all, but more like a compressed sheet of frozen gases, sculpted thin by eons of erosion in the interstellar winds. The theories multiplied, and with each, the mystery grew. Because in truth, ʻOumuamua was too far away, too fast, too faint. We could not see its true outline. We only glimpsed the shadows it cast in our instruments. It was like trying to understand a stranger's face from the flicker of a candle against the wall. And yet, that glimpse was enough to disturb the familiar. It was enough to make scientists ask questions that sounded at first almost like science fiction. Could this shape be intentional? Could this strange geometry be something designed, not merely born? The idea was not shouted but whispered, because scientists are cautious, careful. They do not leap to the extraordinary without exhausting the ordinary. And so the dominant explanation remained natural. Perhaps an odd shard, yes, but still a shard of stone, nothing more. Still, the thought lingered. What if? As you imagine it now, picture ʻOumuamua drifting through the quiet of space, a long, slender shadow, tumbling end over end, each turn catching sunlight for a moment before spinning back into darkness. Silent, unfathomably ancient, not built for us, not even aware of us, just a wanderer, caught briefly in our gaze. It reminds us that shape can tell a story. A rounded pebble tells of tumbling collisions, of smoothing impacts. A jagged shard tells of fracture, of violence. A thin, elongated sliver tells of something else entirely, something rare, something we cannot easily explain. ʻOumuamua's story is hidden in that strangeness. And like all good mysteries, it is the unanswered questions that lull the mind into wonder. As the days passed in late 2017, telescopes tracked its flickers with urgency, but each night, the rock grew fainter. By the time the community of astronomers had truly realized how unique its shape was, it was already slipping away, shrinking into the background of countless stars. The chance for clarity was gone. All we were left with was inference, speculation, and the strange rhythm of a light curve that spoke of something no one had expected. And perhaps that is what makes the memory of ʻOumuamua so compelling, not because we solved it, but because we did not. Its shape remains a question mark carved across the night sky, a reminder that the universe does not owe us easy answers. Sometimes it offers only riddles, disguised as shadows and flickers of light. So as you drift deeper into rest, let yourself imagine that lonely shard gliding away, far beyond our reach now, thin as a whisper, long as a memory, a cosmic visitor whose silhouette remains a secret. And yet, as puzzling as its shape was, there was something even more surprising, for the path ʻOumuamua traced was not quite what gravity alone would predict. It seemed to slip, just slightly, as if nudged by some hidden hand. And so, in the next part of our journey, we will follow that puzzle. How could an object so strange also move in ways that defied our expectations? Close your eyes and imagine a leaf carried downstream by a quiet river. The water moves with steady patience, guiding every twig and petal along its course. Most things within the river are bound to it, their fates tied to the current. Our solar system is much the same. The sun is the great current, its gravity pulling planets, moons, comets, and asteroids into orbits, each a silent dance around the same glowing center. But ʻOumuamua was different. It was not bound to the current. It was like a leaf that had drifted in from somewhere beyond the riverbank, skipping across the surface and then slipping away again. When astronomers calculated its speed, they were astonished. At its fastest, ʻOumuamua raced past the sun at more than 87 kilometers per second. To give that motion a sense of scale, imagine traveling from New York to Los Angeles, not in 6 hours by airplane, but in less than a minute. That is the speed at which this strange body soared through our neighborhood of space. And the speed told a story. For every planet and asteroid there is a balance. The sun's gravity pulls inward, but the body's forward momentum carries it around in an orbit. If an asteroid moves too slowly, it falls inward, perhaps colliding with a planet or spiraling into the Sunday. If it moves at just the right pace, it maintains a steady orbit, year after year, century after century. But if it moves fast enough, fast beyond the sun's grasp, it escapes. It becomes a wanderer, unbound. ʻOumuamua was unmistakably unbound. Its trajectory was not an ellipse circling back on itself, but a hyperbola, curving inward toward the sun, bending slightly, and then flinging outward again. Hyperbolic orbits are rare. They are the signature of visitors, not residents. Most of the objects we know with such orbits are comets kicked by planets. Sometimes, a comet brushes close to Jupiter, and the giant planet's gravity whips it outward, accelerating it just enough to escape the solar system forever. But ʻOumuamua's case was different. It did not begin here. Its speed, even before it reached us, was far too great. It was already interstellar, already free, before our sun ever touched it. Think of it as a guest walking through a room. Most of the furniture belongs there, chairs, tables, lamps, each arranged around the walls, familiar and steady. But once in a while, the door opens, and someone from outside steps in. They don't linger, they don't sit. They just pass through, carried by momentum from elsewhere, and before long, they are gone again. That was ʻOumuamua's visit, brief, unplanned, unstoppable. Its speed also meant something bittersweet. We could never catch it. No rocket in our possession, no spacecraft yet built, could accelerate fast enough to chase it down. By the time we even recognized what it was already too far, already receding into the shadows. It passed closest to Earth in October 2017, but it wasn't until after that encounter that the world began to realize what had brushed by. By then, it was too late. Our only chance was to watch as it slipped away. Astronomers traced its path backward across the stars, searching for its origin, but the trail dissolved into uncertainty. Somewhere beyond the constellation Lyra, it had entered our solar system. Perhaps it had wandered for millions, even billions of years, crossing the dark gulfs between stars. Perhaps it had once circled a distant sun, flung away by gravitational tides, and set adrift in the cold. Its speed was its only testimony. It did not belong here. There is something humbling about that realization. For centuries, humanity assumed that what we could see, planets, stars, comets, were the main actors of the cosmos. But ʻOumuamua reminds us that there are countless wanderers too, invisible most of the time, passing silently between stars. How many more drift unseen? How many slip past us, never noticed? The speed of ʻOumuamua invites us to picture the immensity of interstellar space. Stars are like islands in an endless ocean, each surrounded by its own family of orbiting bodies. To cross from one star to another is to journey across a gulf so vast that even light itself takes years, decades, or centuries to arrive. And yet, ʻOumuamua had done just that. Not as light, but as matter, slow compared to photons, yet fast enough to span unimaginable distances over aeons. We can imagine its long voyage. Perhaps it was born when a planet collided with another, fragments hurled into the sky. Perhaps it was cast away by the unstable pull of giant planets, ejected like a stone slung from a sling. Year after year, century after century, it sailed onward, indifferent to destination, indifferent to time, through starless voids, through frozen silence, until by chance it drifted near enough for our sun's gravity to bend its path, like a finger gently brushing a passing moth. That brief bend was all it gave us, a momentary curve, then onward again, not bound, not captured, not one of us. For astronomers, this was a reminder of the fragility of observation. The universe offers us wonders, but only briefly, only if we look at the right time, in the right place. ʻOumuamua was a visitor with no intention to stay. It was never ours to keep, only ours to notice and to wonder about, as it vanished back into the darkness. And yet, the very fact that we saw it at all is extraordinary. Imagine the odds. A shard of another world, perhaps hundreds of meters long, drifting through the infinite sea of space, and by sheer chance, it passed through our tiny system of planets at the exact moment in human history when we had telescopes powerful enough to glimpse it. What are the chances of that? Like a grain of sand tossed into an ocean, washing ashore at the very moment someone is standing there to pick it up. The speed told us that the universe is larger, older, more filled with wanderers than we can fathom. ʻOumuamua was proof that we are connected, not by communication or intention, but by motion. Our solar system is not sealed, it is open. It receives visitors, however briefly, from other suns. And in the hush of that realization, another question began to form, because its speed and path were not just hyperbolic, they contained something else, something subtle. As it passed, astronomers noticed that its trajectory did not quite match the pull of gravity alone. It seemed to be drifting, ever so slightly, as though nudged by a hidden hand. And so, the puzzle deepened. It was not only ʻOumuamua's speed that astonished us, but also the way it moved, departing from the script gravity had written. In the next part of our story, we will turn to its name, a name chosen with care that carries its own meaning, ʻOumuamua, the messenger from afar. When something new arrives in our lives, one of the first things we do is name it. A child, a place, even a pet or a storm, each receives a word, a label, a sound that becomes its anchor in memory. Without a name, a thing is shapeless in our minds. With a name, it begins to live in our language. And so, when astronomers spotted this strange interstellar traveller, they had to ask, what shall we call it? At first, the data labelled it dryly, C 2017 U1, a string of letters and numbers, nothing more than a code in the vast catalogue of comets and asteroids. To scientists, this is practical. A way to record discovery date, category and order, but for something so unusual, a code was not enough. A name was needed. The discovery had taken place in Hawaii, at the Pan-STARRS telescope, perched high on the slopes of Haleakala. The island chain, set far in the Pacific, has its own ancient relationship with the stars. Long before telescopes, the Hawaiian people used the heavens to navigate their canoes across immense ocean distances. The stars were maps, stories, and companions. To honor that tradition, the astronomers sought a Hawaiian name for this object from beyond. The name chosen was ʻOumuamua. In Hawaiian, the word combines two ideas, U meaning to reach out for, and mua meaning first or ahead. Together, they create a sense of something that scouts, something that leads, something that comes before, a messenger, a scout, a harbinger from afar. It was a fitting choice, for this was the first interstellar object we had ever seen passing through our solar system, a true pioneer among stones. And it carried with it the sense of something that arrives unexpectedly, delivering a message, then vanishing into the distance. Think of how names shape the way we think. If we had left it with the sterile C 2017 U1, the world might not have leaned so close to its story. But ʻOumuamua, That word lingers on the tongue like a chant, like a wave's rhythm. It is poetic, mysterious, alive. It gives the rock personality, a whisper of myth. There is something gentle in the way cultures use names to connect the unknown with the familiar. By naming this visitor in Hawaiian, astronomers acknowledge not only the location of its discovery, but also the long heritage of skywatching that came before telescopes. The Polynesian navigators once steered their voyaging canoes using only the stars, reading subtle shifts in the heavens with patient eyes. For them, the night sky was a living guide. Naming the object ʻOumuamua tied this modern discovery to that ancient tradition. Imagine a navigator centuries ago, gazing upward from a canoe rocking on the Pacific waves. The stars wheel overhead, constellations steady and known. If such a traveller had seen a flicker of light unlike the rest, they might have woven a story about a visitor from beyond, a sign from the gods, a wandering spirit. Now, in our era of data and telescopes, the same awe persists, though shaped into the language of science. But the name ʻOumuamua bridges the two, myth and measurement, poetry and precision. It is easy to forget that science and story are not opposites, they are partners. A story gives science meaning, science gives story weight. ʻOumuamua is both an entry in a catalogue and a character in our imagination. Its name allowed us to dream of it, not just as rock and ice, but as a traveller, a messenger, a scout. And what does it mean for a scout to appear? A scout comes before others. A scout is the first to arrive, the first to glimpse new lands, the first to deliver news. Does the name suggest that others may follow? That this is only the beginning, and more wanderers will one day drift past our sun? Perhaps. In fact, not long after Oumuamua departed, another interstellar object was indeed discovered, Comet Borisov, in 2019. This one was more ordinary, more comet-like, trailing a gaseous tail, its nature clear, but its presence confirmed the idea. We live in a galaxy alive with travellers. Oumuamua was not an isolated accident. It was the first scout we noticed, but surely not the last. The Hawaiian word also carries a quiet sense of respect. To call it a messenger is to acknowledge that it may carry meaning, even if we cannot read it. Perhaps its meaning lies simply in its existence, proof that the boundaries of our solar system are porous, that other worlds shed fragments, and that those fragments sometimes find their way to us. The message may be nothing more than, "You are not alone in the river of stars." Names also soften the unknown. It is easier to hold in our minds a visitor with a name than a streak of data. To say, Oumuamua, is to turn numbers into story, to give our imagination something to cradle. Like a lullaby, the name repeats softly, rolling with vowels, anchored with the gentle catch of the glottal stop at the beginning. It feels like a word meant for twilight. And so, Oumuamua's name is not just a label, it is part of its mystery. Without it, perhaps the public would have forgotten the story, buried under other news. But with it, the tale lives on. Oumuamua, the scout from afar, who came once, unbidden, and left us wondering. As you let the name settle in your mind, imagine it whispered by the sea wind over volcanic slopes and carried across the ocean waves. Imagine it written among the stars like a delicate signature, a reminder that even in the vastness of the cosmos, there are moments when the unknown reaches out and touches us, leaving a name behind. And yet, a name, however poetic, does not resolve the puzzle of what Oumuamua truly was. Scientists tried to explain it in familiar terms, perhaps a rock, perhaps ice, perhaps just another natural fragment of the universe. In the next part of our journey, we'll rest with those explanations, the ordinary theories that seek to make the extraordinary seem simple. When something unfamiliar appears in science, the first instinct is often not to leap toward the extraordinary, but to look for the ordinary. Before we imagine messengers from distant civilizations, we ask, could this be nothing more than stone, ice, or dust? That is the gentle discipline of science, to let wonder breathe, but to tether it first to what we know. So, when Oumuamua streaked through the solar system, astronomers began by searching their catalogues of natural explanations. What could make a body look and behave this way without invoking anything beyond nature's patient hands? The first idea was simple. Perhaps it was just an asteroid, a fragment of rock chipped from a planet, wandering between stars until chance brought it to us. Its reddish surface fit the picture, scorched by cosmic rays into a deep rusty tone, much like the asteroids that drift near Jupiter. But almost at once, the shape and brightness patterns made this difficult. Most asteroids are irregular, but roughly rounded, their light curves gentle. ʻOumuamua's flickers suggested something far more extreme. Could an asteroid be so elongated? Maybe, if it had been fractured in some distant collision. Maybe if a planet had been torn apart, flinging out narrow splinters into space. But no asteroid we had ever studied was quite like this one. The second theory leaned toward ice. Perhaps ʻOumuamua was a comet without a tail. Comets, after all, are natural wanderers, their icy hearts heating up when they approach the sun, releasing jets of vapor that push them slightly off course. That could explain the strange deviation in its path. And comets often come from far away. Why not from another star system entirely? Yet here, too, the pieces did not fit easily. A comet should display a coma, a glowing halo of gas and dust boiling off into space. ʻOumuamua showed none. No hazy veil, no shining tail. It moved through sunlight as bare and silent as a stone. If it was shedding gases, it did so invisibly, with a stealth that no comet in our own system had ever shown. Some proposed that it might be composed not of water ice, but of exotic ices rare in our neighborhood, solid hydrogen or solid nitrogen. Such ices, warmed even slightly, could sublimate invisibly, producing thrust without a visible trail. A block of frozen hydrogen, for example, would dissolve into transparent vapor, pushing the rock without leaving a comet's glowing hair. But hydrogen ice is fragile. Could such a body survive the harsh journey between stars, lasting millions of years without melting away? Others countered that nitrogen ice, like the frozen plains of Pluto, might endure longer. Perhaps ʻOumuamua was a shard chipped off a Pluto-like world in another solar system, flung into space and preserved by cold. A possibility, yes, but again, one that raised as many questions as it answered. Still others suggested something more subtle. Perhaps it was not releasing gas at all, but flakes of dust, too fine to reflect light, carried off in the warmth of the Sunday. This gentle erosion could nudge its path without leaving a visible signature, like smoke dispersing in a wind too faint for the eye to see. Each of these natural theories tried to make the extraordinary seem ordinary. A comet without a tail, an asteroid more stretched than any we had seen, a shard of ice unlike any we had touched. None was impossible. None was perfectly satisfying either. Science often works this way, not by offering certainty, but by narrowing possibilities. ʻOumuamua became a mirror of that process. In its brief visit, it resisted every simple category. It was not a comet in the way we know comets. It was not an asteroid in the way we know asteroids. It was something else, something between or beyond. For the public, this was both comforting and unsettling. To say, it's just a rock, is to soothe curiosity, to tuck the strange visitor into a box we already understand. But the details kept slipping out of that box, like trying to cup water in your hands. The more you tried to hold it, the more it trickled through your fingers. And perhaps that is part of the beauty. Not everything the universe sends us will fit neatly into our definitions. Sometimes a rock is not just a rock, it is a reminder of how limited our categories are. Each new discovery stretches the edges of what we think we know. Imagine ʻOumuamua as a stone in your palm. You turn it, examine its texture, its angles. You try to guess its story. Was it once part of a mountain? Was it carried by a river, smoothed by centuries of flow? The truth is beyond your knowing, but the act of wondering itself is valuable. So it was with this visitor. Scientists may not have solved its mystery, but they learned to expand their imagination of what a rock or a comet might be. For some, that was enough. To know that the cosmos can make such strange forms, and to realize that we have only just begun to glimpse its variety. For others, the unanswered details pressed heavier. If none of the natural theories fit comfortably, perhaps it was time to let the imagination wander further. But before we follow that path, let us rest a moment with the quieter possibility that ʻOumuamua was in fact nothing more than nature's child, a fragment born in violence, shaped in silence, wandering in exile, arriving at our doorstep by coincidence alone. Perhaps its mystery is not a signal, not a message, but simply the reminder that the universe is vast and full of more shapes than we have yet seen. Even in that simplest reading, there is beauty. A shard of ice, a splinter of rock slipping between stars, bearing witness to events older than Earth itself. To see it, even briefly, is to touch the immensity of time and space. And so, whether asteroid or comet, hydrogen ice or nitrogen shard, we cradle the natural theories as gentle possibilities. They may be wrong or partly right, but they are part of the story, part of the way humanity tries to make sense of the fleeting shadows that pass us by. Yet, as the days of observation wore on, something else tugged at the astronomer's attention. The visitor was not only strange in shape and origin, it moved in ways gravity alone could not explain. A faint push, a quiet drift, as though some hidden hand were guiding it. And so, in the next part of our journey, we turn to that subtle puzzle, ʻOumuamua's unusual behavior and the questions it left behind. By now, the story of ʻOumuamua already held strangeness enough. Its shape was odd, its origin interstellar, its speed beyond the sun's embrace. And yet, there was more. Because when astronomers traced its exact path through the solar system, they found something subtle, something that did not belong. Normally, an object passing near the sun will follow the rules of gravity as precisely as a stone falling to Earth. Newton's laws, Einstein's refinements, these are the scripts by which the universe moves. A comet bends gracefully around the sun, its arc predicted to the tiniest decimal. An asteroid, too, obeys the curve of gravity with patient loyalty, but ʻOumuamua refused to follow the script completely. Its trajectory, when measured carefully, seemed to drift, a little faster than gravity alone would predict, a little farther from the line it should have traced. Not wildly so, but enough that astronomers noticed, enough that equations wavered. At first, the obvious explanation was comet-like behavior. Comets often accelerate slightly when warmed by the sun, their icy cores releasing gas jets that act like tiny thrusters. Invisible puffs of vapor can push them off course in subtle ways. And so, perhaps ʻOumuamua was no more than a comet with an unusually stealthy tail, one invisible to our instruments. But the data strained against this comfort. Sensitive telescopes had seen no hint of gas or dust, no halo, no glowing stream, nothing to betray a comet's breath. If it was venting in silence, like a kettle boiling without steam. Worse, the push seemed too smooth. Cometary jets are messy, uneven, spurting from different spots on a nucleus, causing tumbles and twists. ʻOumuamua's extra drift was steady, gentle, as though applied evenly across its body. It was as if some constant, invisible hand guided it outward. What kind of natural body behaves this way? Some scientists reached again for exotic ices, hydrogen, nitrogen, evaporating without visible trace. Others wondered if it might be shedding a thin sheet of dust, imperceptible but persistent. Each possibility was tested, modelled, debated. Each, in the end, left gaps. For astronomers, such gaps are unsettling. The universe usually plays fair. If you measure carefully enough, if you watch patiently, the pieces fall into place. But ʻOumuamua slipped between categories. Too fast for comfort, too strange for ordinary rock, too quiet for a comet. The unusual behavior became the ember of mystery that refused to die. It was not enough to prove anything extraordinary. It was not enough to claim certainty, but it was enough to keep the door open. Enough to make even cautious voices admit, we do not fully understand this visitor. Imagine it yourself, a shard gliding away into space, tumbling slowly, sunlight glancing off its sides. Yet, it drifts a little faster than expected, as though buoyed by some invisible wind. The calculations say one thing, the reality says another. The difference is tiny, but in science, tiny differences matter. Tiny differences are the cracks through which new truths emerge. It is tempting to think of the drift as intentional, like a sail catching sunlight, easing a craft forward with gentle force. Indeed, some suggested just that ʻOumuamua might be a thin object, pushed outward by radiation pressure, The same way a sailboat glides on wind, the sunlight carries momentum. On large, flat surfaces, its pressure, though delicate, can be felt. If ʻOumuamua were thin enough, light itself could have been its engine. But was it thin enough? Could nature carve such a shape? Could a shard survive the voyage intact? Each question bloomed into more, and none resolved fully. In this uncertainty, the story gained its power, because sometimes what unsettles us most is not a loud mystery, but a quiet one, not a firework, but a whisper. ʻOumuamua's whisper was in its path, a line just slightly skewed, a speed just slightly more, not enough to cry out, but enough to haunt. Astronomers debated. Some leaned toward natural explanations stretched to their limits. Others allowed themselves to speculate further, into realms less ordinary. A few voices suggested that maybe, just maybe, this was not a rock at all. Perhaps it was something crafted. Perhaps the steady push was not ice sublimating, but sunlight pressing against an artificial sail. For many, that leap was too far. Science asks for restraint, for evidence, for skepticism, and yet, science also asks for openness to possibility. ʻOumuamua's unusual behavior was the kind of puzzle that keeps both instincts alive, the caution of disbelief and the wonder of what if. As you rest here, listening, let the thought drift gently across your mind. Imagine a shard of another world slipping past our Sunday. Natural or not, it moves with grace, with a quiet refusal to be ordinary. It does not care for our labels, asteroid, comet, shard, sail. It simply moves, in the way it must, carrying with it a mystery that we cannot pin down. Perhaps, in the end, that is the true lesson. The universe is under no obligation to fit our categories. Nature is not bound by the neat boxes we draw. Sometimes, a visitor arrives that reminds us how wide the cosmos truly is, how much remains beyond our grasp. And so, ʻOumuamua slipped away, fainter, smaller, further, until even the largest telescopes could no longer catch its flicker. Its unusual drift remained, a note unresolved in the music of the stars, a reminder that even in silence, even in absence, mystery endures. But whispers grow louder when given voice, and soon a few scientists dared to ask aloud the question many only thought in secret. What if ʻOumuamua was not merely a shard of rock or ice at all? What if it was something designed? In the next part of our journey, we will step quietly into those speculations, into the realm where science brushes against imagination, where the whispers of the extraordinary begin. Science is often a discipline of patience and restraint. Most questions are first answered with the ordinary, the familiar. When a comet veers slightly off course, we look for vapor and ice. When a rock glows red, we look for radiation and dust. But sometimes, an object appears that resists every simple explanation, slipping between categories like a shadow through the cracks. And in those rare moments, a whisper rises, a whisper of the extraordinary. ʻOumuamua was such an object. By the time its faint light had faded beyond telescopes, the data left behind still pulsed with unease. Its shape was too extreme, its behavior too smooth, its origin too uncertain. Natural explanations existed, but each carried gaps, each left questions unanswered. And so, a few scientists began to wonder, quietly at first, what if this was not just a rock? The thought was not shouted, but breathed. In academic halls, whispers turned to cautious papers, framed with disclaimers and hedged in maybes. The suggestion was this: perhaps ʻOumuamua was not a fragment of nature at all, but a relic of technology. Perhaps it was, in some way, artificial. Imagine, for a moment, a sail, not the kind you see on the sea, but a sail for the stars, a thin sheet, stretched wide, designed to catch sunlight as wind. Photons, though weightless, carry momentum, push them against a delicate sheet, and over time, they can propel a craft silently across the void. We call this idea a solar sail, a dream of interstellar travel, conceived by our own species. Now, recall ʻOumuamua's strange acceleration, its subtle drift, steady and smooth, as though pushed evenly by something unseen. To some, This looked very much like the effect of radiation pressure on a thin object. If ʻOumuamua were flat and delicate, thinner than a sheet of paper, perhaps sunlight itself was its engine. Could such an object be natural? Maybe. But the more one imagined a sail, the more the metaphor deepened. Could it be that what passed us by was not an accident of stone, but a shard of engineering? Perhaps a piece of technology cast adrift from another civilization, sailing endlessly on starlight, crossing gulfs beyond our imagination. Of course, to say this aloud is to step into dangerous territory. Science values caution. To claim alien technology without proof risks credibility, and yet the idea could not be fully dismissed. It was too aligned with the gaps in the data, too intriguing to ignore. One of the most outspoken voices was Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard University. He suggested that perhaps ʻOumuamua was a probe, or at least a fragment, of something made, not born. His argument was not that it must be artificial, but that the possibility deserved serious thought. Why assume every strange visitor is natural, when the universe is old and vast enough to harbour others like us? The response was mixed. Some scientists dismissed the idea as reckless, preferring the safety of icy fragments and invisible comas. Others admitted, privately, that the data did leave room for imagination. And the public, hearing the words "alien probe" in headlines, leaned forward in fascination. For many, it was easier to dream than to calculate. But let us linger, not on debate, but on possibility. Imagine, if you will, that ʻOumuamua was once part of a craft, a vessel sent from another star, perhaps centuries, perhaps millennia ago. Imagine it drifting silently, its mission forgotten, its creators unknown, passing through our solar system by chance. We would not know its purpose. We would not even know if it was still alive or only a husk. But the thought itself expands the walls of our imagination. Or picture it not as a craft, but as debris. Just as our own satellites will one day break and scatter, perhaps other civilizations too leave fragments behind, shards of sails, panels, or relics, cast loose into interstellar space. What we saw could have been such a relic, no longer active, no longer guided, but still carrying the fingerprint of intention. The beauty of this speculation is not in certainty, but in wonder. Whether or not ʻOumuamua was artificial, the very act of asking reminds us that we are part of a larger question. Are we alone? Do the stars hold not just rocks and comets, but echoes of minds? Science does not rush to answer yes, but it also does not forbid the asking. Whispers of the extraordinary keep curiosity alive, guiding us to look again, to measure more carefully, to wonder more deeply. Even as you rest now, imagine yourself drifting beside ʻOumuamua in the dark. Its shape turns slowly, long or flat, hard to discern. The sunlight kisses its surface, pushing it gently outward. No sound, no signal, no clear purpose, just a presence. It does not speak, and yet it stirs questions louder than words. If it was artificial, perhaps it has been drifting for millions of years. Its builders long gone, their world perhaps even extinguished. If so, then it is a ghost of civilization, a silent testament that others once reached for the stars. And if it was not artificial, then it is no less wondrous, for it means that nature herself can sculpt shapes and motions so strange that we mistake them for invention. In either case, the lesson is the same. The universe is stranger, deeper, and more filled with possibility than we often allow ourselves to believe. The whispers of the extraordinary do not demand belief. They ask only that we wonder, and sometimes wonder is the most important part of the human story. But whispers become louder when carried by a voice unafraid to speak them. And one scientist, more than any other, chose to give those whispers form, to argue openly for the possibility of the extraordinary. In the next part of our journey, we will meet him, Avi Loeb, and see how his bold suggestions stirred both fascination and controversy in the world of science. In every age, there are voices that step beyond the comfort of consensus. Science, like the stars, has its constellations, patterns of agreement, clusters of knowledge, lines of thought that most follow. But now and then, someone dares to redraw those lines, to connect the stars differently, to see a new picture in the night. When ʻOumuamua appeared and left us with riddles, one such voice rose above the whisper, It belonged to a scientist named Avi Loeb. Loeb was not a fringe thinker, nor an outsider. He was the chair of Harvard's astronomy department, a scholar with decades of work in theoretical physics and astrophysics. He had written about black holes, about the first stars, about the deep structure of the cosmos. His career was built on equations and evidence. And yet, when faced with the puzzle of ʻOumuamua, he spoke a thought that most scientists only murmured, if they allowed it at all. What if this object was artificial? To Loeb, the reasoning was straightforward. The object's acceleration was too smooth for random jets of gas, too persistent to ignore. Its shape, inferred from its brightness, was too extreme to match ordinary asteroids. The simplest explanation, in his eyes, was that it was a thin structure moved by radiation pressure. And while such a structure could, in theory, be natural, the possibility that it was engineered seemed worth considering. He compared it to a sail, a light, thin sheet designed to drift on starlight. Our own species had dreamed of such sails, even tested tiny versions in space. If we could imagine it, why not others? Why should we assume that the first interstellar visitor we ever saw must be only rock, when the data left room for something more? But science is cautious by habit. Most astronomers insisted on natural explanations, even if stretched thin. Exotic ice, invisible outgassing, peculiar shapes, they strained to make nature fit, preferring unlikely geology to even the faintest suggestion of technology. To them, Loeb's proposal sounded like a leap too far, a step beyond evidence into speculation. The controversy grew quickly. Headlines blared with the words alien probe catching the public imagination. News outlets repeated Loeb's theory in bold letters, sometimes without the careful hedges of his actual words. For readers, it was thrilling, a Harvard scientist suggesting aliens. For other scientists, it was troubling. They feared the distortion, the sensationalism, the risk of credibility lost. Loeb, however, did not retreat. He doubled down, writing essays, giving interviews, and eventually publishing a book, Extraterrestrial, in which he argued that we must take such possibilities seriously, not as fantasy, but as science. To ignore them, he said, was to close our minds to evidence that might change everything. His stance sparked division. Some praised his boldness, admiring his willingness to ask the questions others avoided. Others criticized him harshly, calling his claims reckless, his publicity harmful. In the halls of academia, reputations are delicate things, and Loeb risked his with each sentence that entertained the extraordinary. But Loeb reminded his critics of an old truth. All great discoveries begin with questions that seem improbable. Once, the idea that Earth moved around the sun was heresy. Once, the notion of galaxies beyond our own was laughable. Science grows by daring to ask, why then should we silence the possibility that ʻOumuamua was not just stone? Imagine the courage it takes to stand in a crowded room of scholars, all shaking their heads, and to say aloud, perhaps it was not natural. It is easier to stay silent, to nod politely, to let consensus carry the day. But Loeb refused. He placed the possibility of the extraordinary on the table and said, let us not dismiss it so quickly. And so, the debate became not only about ʻOumuamua, but about science itself. What is the role of imagination in discovery? Where is the line between speculation and evidence? Should we guard the gates of credibility tightly, or should we open them, even at the risk of embarrassment, to glimpses of the unknown? For those listening quietly, the controversy was almost poetic. On one side, the gravity of caution, pulling science toward the safety of the familiar. On the other, the momentum of wonder, urging us to drift outward into possibility. Like ʻOumuamua itself, the conversation curved between gravity and freedom, pulled by both forces at once. Loeb's words touched not only scientists but dreamers. For ordinary people, who may never pass a light curve or write an equation, the thought that this shard of stone might have been a message stirred something primal. The night sky has always whispered of others, of neighbors unseen. Loeb gave those whispers a voice. Whether he was right or wrong may never be known. ʻOumuamua is long gone, beyond the reach of telescopes, its secrets locked in silence. But Loeb's daring did something important. It reminded us that science is not only about answers, it is about questions, asked with courage, even when they make us uncomfortable. And so, Avi Loeb became part of the story of ʻOumuamua itself. Not just the rock, not just the data, but the human reaction, the debate, the daring, the refusal to let mystery be muffled by consensus. As you rest now, let that thought settle. Sometimes, the most valuable voices are not the ones who give us certainty, but the ones who keep the door open. Loeb kept that door ajar, inviting us to wonder, inviting us to dream. And in the stillness of night, perhaps that is the best gift science can offer, not only knowledge, but the courage to admit how much we do not know. Still, whatever one believes about ʻOumuamua, rock, ice, sail, or something more, its visit was brief. It passed us once and slipped away, but perhaps it was not alone. Perhaps other wanderers have come before, or will come again. In the next part of our journey, we will look at other travelers from the stars and ask, was ʻOumuamua truly unique, or simply the first scout we managed to see? ʻOumuamua may have felt like a singular miracle, a fleeting visitor from beyond, the first of its kind, but the truth is gentler, more expansive. It was likely not the only one. The universe, after all, does not deal in singularities when abundance is easier. Just as rivers carry driftwood and winds carry seeds, the galaxy itself carries wanderers. Stones, shards, icy fragments, drifting endlessly between stars. Long before 2017, astronomers suspected that such interstellar visitors must exist. Stars form in clusters, their gravity tugging and pushing newborn planets, ejecting countless fragments into the void. Over billions of years, these fragments scatter like pollen, filling the galactic spaces with silent debris. But until ʻOumuamua, none had been seen. That was not because they were absent, but because they were faint, small, and fast. To glimpse one is to catch a moth in the corner of vision, only for it to vanish into the night. But once you've seen the first, you realize how many must be fluttering unseen. And indeed, only 2 years after ʻOumuamua, another interstellar visitor appeared, Comet Borisov, discovered in 2019 by an amateur astronomer in Crimea named Gennady Borisov. Unlike ʻOumuamua, this one looked familiar. It had a coma, a hazy tail of gas and dust streaming behind it. Its path was hyperbolic too, unmistakably interstellar. But its behavior fit neatly into the comet category. Comet Borisov was comforting in its ordinariness. It proved that interstellar objects were not one in a million anomalies, but part of a broader population. If we had seen 2 in only a handful of years, how many more must pass unseen, slipping through our skies while we blink? Think of a forest at night. You may see only one firefly flicker in the darkness, and for a moment it feels rare, miraculous. But wait longer, and your eyes adjust. Soon, you realize the forest is alive with them, countless sparks drifting in and out of view. ʻOumuamua was our first firefly. Borisov showed us there are many. Scientists began to calculate. If even our modest telescopes caught 2 in such a short span, the galaxy must be thick with them, trillions upon trillions of shards drifting between stars. Most will never cross our path, but some will, quietly, briefly, like messengers whose letters we cannot open. And so, astronomers began to dream of better eyes. Projects were proposed, new surveys, new telescopes, with sensitivity tuned to the faint streaks of such wanderers. One in particular, the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, in Chile, promises to transform this search. Its wide, powerful eye will sweep the sky night after night, mapping changes with unprecedented detail. When it begins its surveys, we may discover not just one visitor every few years, but perhaps dozens, even hundreds. What then? Perhaps we will learn that interstellar wanderers come in many flavors, some icy shedding tails as they pass, some rocky, silent bare, some elongated and strange. Perhaps even stranger forms we have not yet imagined. Each will carry a story of a star's birth, of a planet's death, of collisions and ejections and journeys across the galactic sea. And maybe, just maybe, one day we will catch one soon enough, close enough, to send a spacecraft to greet it. The idea is no longer fantasy. Plans are already being sketched for missions that could launch quickly when such an object is discovered, intercepting it before it slips away. To fly beside an interstellar fragment, to study its surface directly, would be to touch a piece of another star's story with our own hands. But even without missions, the presence of these wanderers changes how we see the night sky. We are not sealed off, isolated in our solar system. We live in a cosmos alive with exchange. Stones and comets are traded between stars, carried across gulfs by nothing more than momentum and time. The same way seeds can travel between distant islands on the wings of birds, fragments of worlds travel between distant suns, whispering of their origins. Pause here and let yourself imagine that flow. Across the galaxy, stars shed their children, rocks, ices, shards. Each one drifts outward, slowly at first, then faster, then free. Between the spiral arms of the Milky Way they wander. Most will never find another system, but a few by chance will slip close to another sun, and for a brief time they will be noticed. For a brief time, like ʻOumuamua, they will cast their shadows in another world's sky. What we saw in 2017 may therefore be just the beginning. Our instruments are growing sharper, our patience deeper. The river of stars flows on, and with it, the driftwood of countless shattered worlds. Visitors will come again. Some will be ordinary, like Borisov, reminding us of familiar patterns. Some may be strange, like ʻOumuamua, stretching the edges of our imagination. And who knows? Perhaps among them, someday, one will carry more than stone. Perhaps one will carry the faintest hint of intention, a true messenger, not just in name, but in design. If so, will we recognize it? Will we be ready to greet it? For now, all we can do is wait. Wait, and watch the sky, knowing that every faint dot may hold a story from another sun. Knowing that our solar system is not an island, but a port where travelers sometimes dock, if only for a moment. As you rest, let that thought cradle you. We are not alone in stillness. The galaxy is alive with motion, with countless wanderers unseen. We may never know all their names, but we know their presence. Like the hush of wind through trees, like the ripple of water in a stream, they pass, and we are reminded of connection. ʻOumuamua was our first. Borisov was our second. There will be more. Each one a reminder that we live in a cosmos that is not static, but flowing, ever carrying, ever delivering, ever surprising. Every story has its ending, though not all are written in words. Some are written in silence, in the fading of light, in the slow retreat of a presence that once brushed close. ʻOumuamua's story with us was always destined to be brief. It came quickly, and it left just as quickly, and in that brevity lies its power. After October 2017, night after night, telescopes around the world tried to catch it. Each evening, it grew fainter. First a point of light that could be measured with care, then a trace, requiring long exposures, then finally, nothing at all. By the end of the year, ʻOumuamua had slipped beyond the reach of even our most sensitive instruments. It was gone. Not destroyed, not ended, simply out of sight, out into the dark gulf between the stars, where no human eye can follow. Even now, it is still moving, still drifting, carrying its mystery with it. By now, it has already travelled billions of kilometres farther, and with every second, the distance grows. Imagine it now, tumbling end over end in the silence of interstellar space. The sun is behind it, a shrinking star among countless others. Ahead lies emptiness, but not despairing emptiness. Emptiness, alive with potential, with distant suns, with unknown worlds it may never reach but will pass by all the same. ʻOumuamua does not slow, it does not tire. Momentum is its companion, gravity its occasional guide. It will wander on for millions of years, perhaps forever, unless chance carries it close to another star, another system, another curious set of eyes. There is something profoundly gentle in this kind of goodbye. We often imagine farewells as dramatic, doors slamming, ships vanishing on the horizon, voices breaking. But ʻOumuamua's farewell was none of these. It was simply a fading point, a retreat into distance, leaving us with the gift of wonder. And perhaps that is how the universe often says goodbye, not with finality, but with mystery, not with answers, but with questions. We are left not with certainty, but with imagination, which is softer, more enduring. Think of how brief our encounter was. A few weeks of observation after millions of years of travel. Like catching the eye of a stranger in a crowded station, one glance, and then they are gone forever, leaving behind only the trace of possibility. We do not know their story, but we know they had one. And knowing that is enough. In this way, ʻOumuamua teaches us something about the beauty of fleetingness. Not all connections are meant to last. Some are meant only to touch us for a moment, to remind us of the vastness beyond ourselves, and then to move on. That reminder alone can change us. And so, we say goodbye to this visitor. We do not know what it was, or why it passed, or what worlds it once called home. We only know that it was here, and now it is gone. Its quiet farewell lingers in us, a story we tell again and again, each time wondering, each time dreaming. As you listen now, imagine yourself drifting with it. Picture yourself as a silent passenger, carried on its long voyage outward. The stars around you wheel slowly, the sun behind you grows dimmer, until it is just another star among thousands. Ahead lies the river of the galaxy, dark but endless, a sea of light scattered across forever. There is no urgency here, no need for answers, only the soft rhythm of travel, the endless glide of a body in motion. In this space, loneliness dissolves into belonging. You are not isolated, you are part of the flow, part of the endless drift of matter and light. And as ʻOumuamua fades, so too does our need to solve every riddle. It is enough to let mystery be mystery. Enough to rest in the knowledge that the universe still holds secrets, that not everything is explained, that wonder is still possible. Perhaps that is the truest message of ʻOumuamua, not that it was alien, not that it was ordinary, but that it reminded us of the value of wonder itself. To feel curiosity, to sit with uncertainty, to dream, that is as much a part of being human as any equation or measurement. So let the visitor slip away in your mind, let it fade into the distance, carrying its unanswered questions. Let it go, knowing that its story continues somewhere beyond, even if we never read the next chapter. And in that letting go, allow yourself to rest, to drift as it drifts, to accept that not all journeys need destinations, not all puzzles need solutions, not all stories need closure. Sometimes, it is enough to say, "You were here, and I saw you." And now, dear dreamer, our journey with ʻOumuamua comes to its close. From its sudden discovery to its strange behavior, from whispers of alien sails to reflections on our own loneliness, it has carried us gently into the wide sea of wonder. We cannot chase it, we cannot hold it, but we can carry its lesson, that the universe is alive with mystery, and that even a single passing shard can remind us of connection, of curiosity, of awe. So as you lie here tonight, let your thoughts drift outward with it. Imagine the stars above as companions, not distant strangers. Imagine yourself carried gently, not hurried, on a journey with no end. And in that imagining, find peace. Thank you for traveling with me through this quiet story of the cosmos. May it soothe your mind, soften your thoughts, and cradle you into sleep. Good night, traveler. May your dreams be as wide as the galaxy and as gentle as the hush of starlight.